evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Really, we were enjoying listening to the conversation and the bustling because that's an indication of good conversation and also community. So we didn't want to break that up, but we do want to be respectful of your time this evening. We have reporters from the 20 groups that met, and I'm going to give some guidelines for their reporting this evening. We are trying to be timely, but we also want to be considerate and acknowledge the amount of time that went into your discussions. Each reporter will have 2 minutes, and we do have a timekeeper. If you are saying a criteria from your group, or if your message from your group has already been stated, please do not restate it. We will be collecting all of the reporters' notes. They will be transcribed, so everything that you said in your groups will be transcribed and will be available, but we may not have time to hear all of your suggestions and ideas per se. Each group will have 2 minutes, and this evening we are going to start with Group 20. Please come forward.
Going backwards.
So for number one of the answers that we came up with is color equals suspension, which basically means that, So one of the things we said for number one is that color equals suspension, which basically means that people of color are in schools are more likely to get suspended, and the rate is higher than like whites.
That is true.
And the schools should take a time to talk to the students about racism beyond the textbook definition.
So also just keeping a record of the fact that there's less opportunity and the kinds of discipline that are being given out to children of different colors. We really talked a lot about, how someone of black descent or white descent might, or Hispanic descent might get disciplined, suspended, or punished differently in the school. So that was another big topic. Then for the second question, we talked a lot about asking questions, having, dialogues in your schools, having kids ask teachers questions, even if they're uncomfortable, and having teachers really try and work through how to answer. And if they don't know, that's okay, but maybe that's a great way to start a dialogue in a classroom. That's just a thought that we had. Also, having youth specialists, youth leadership within the school, really creating, this great connection between older youth and younger youth, and having youth workers really facilitate dialogues within their own schools, coming from inside. In terms of the third question, community and faith-based, just really getting everyone in the community working together on the same page, bringing them into the schools as much as possible was our thought process there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Group number 19.
So group number 19 made some very good observations and statements. The first of which, for question number one, was that geography dictates schools, poor schools and good schools. And that is of a concern that people living in certain segments of the community may not always get the best education. School funding is problematic. They felt that the funding is so stretched sometimes that administrators and teachers are unable to address racism at times. The summation is that everyone in the school district and community is fighting for the same things. And one of the statements that was made in our group is that there are a lot of people of color and race who want the same things as all people want. And sometimes because of the way they're treated in different environments, they feel that they're unable to have the same things that everyone else has in their reach in terms of further education and jobs. The school district, they felt that to make people comfortable, teachers should teach kids not to hurt one another in all aspects, but especially regarding race, that teachers have some power over that. They feel that the schools should be celebrating children's differences within the schools, and that all children should be made to feel valued and comfortable within their school settings. And finally, in that question, the history, they feel that a course in history of different cultures and where different people come from and live and what they bring to the educational environment should be part of the curriculum so that people can respect all races. Okay, I think just I only have 1 minute left, but it was 30 seconds left. So one of the things that I thought was really, really important is that one member of our group stated that she felt that Worcester is a very collaborative community and that people do come together when they need to come together. And that this is an issue that's important and people are coming together. And that there have been some serious issues in the schools and in the city that have been resolved as a result of collaboration. And so I guess I'll end my 30 minutes by saying, there was a lot of other stuff, by saying that collaboration would be very helpful in resolving some of the issues of race in Worcester. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm being very strict tonight so for the other reporters, you will have 2 minutes to present your presentation. Number 18.
We were combined.
Combined with 20, okay. Then number 17.
Group 17 was a marvelous group, is a marvelous group, and will be a marvelous group tomorrow. As for question number 1, check. As for question number 2, check, check. As for question number 3, I think the most important outcomes from our group are these. We need to think about and act on high expectations for all of our students. And that part of that means a consistent discipline policy across the school system. The other thing that we need to, we think needs to be worked on is the ability for our educators to teach to the reality of their classrooms. And what I mean by that is that we need to speak to the diversity that's present. If the only stories that our students are hearing are of other people's cultures and experiences, and they're not able to envision themselves, and the staff that is teaching them does not reflect their experience, they're not going to learn a thing, except that this isn't for them. We believe that there needs to be a system overhaul with a curriculum that is more balanced and multicultural, and that there be training for educators in racism and systemic racism, and what does it mean. And then as for the faith-based communities, of which no one in the group knew a darn thing about, the idea that there should be community organizations, including faith-based institutions, that empower our children in the community to reflect what is best in them and what is best in us because of them.
Page 16.
Hello, reporting for Group 16. We had a good discussion tonight. Our bullet points for how racism affects educational opportunities in the school are that it impacts the dropout rate, it detracts from a lack of role models for the students, and it directly impacts the disciplinary action and the suspension rates in the school. Our group thought that things that the educators can do. They can have more training and coaching. They can deal with racism problems before they become issues, basically addressing the elephant in the room early on. And our group felt that teachers need to be more of a stronger part of our community. What can students do? Our group felt that students need to have a community voice. They need to be active in their own student government organizations, and students need to examine their own bias that they bring to the school. And what can our community and faith organizations do? They can work with our community to get the word out. For instance, get the word out about opportunities and dialogues like this. And our community organizations can be part of the education of our students. Thank you.
All right, Group 15 started our conversation. We spoke of systematic racism, really focusing on the neighborhoods that kids from the community grow up in, their access to books, and how where people live in the community, regardless of race, does play a factor in how they succeed in school. We talked about the individuals, teachers, how teachers can, and in some cases, sadly, do perpetuate some preconceived biases by making snap judgments based on a quick assessment of children in their classrooms when they first come to the school, and oftentimes that sticks with the child as they move throughout the school system. And certainly one of the notes was that, again, this clearly affects more people of color than your average white person. We talked about, again, along those lines, the economic factors that are involved in education, again, for similar reasons. Went to the issue of punishment and how kids are treated differently when they are punished. Kids of color versus white kids might engage in the same behavior, but our group talked about the reaction to that. And what happens often is that, you know, a parent of a more affluent kid is going to come in and they'll know to advocate for their child. And what happens for people from different communities that aren't as familiar with the school system, and often people of color, they're not in there advocating for the child because they don't know that they're supposed to be. And ultimately, a kid will get a much harsher punishment. This starts in the first or second grade, but continues throughout their history until they turn about 13 or 14, and then we lose them. And we talked about how we don't lose the 14-year-olds and what happens to 13 and 14-year-olds at that point in time. We had a great group of young students who were in there, and they certainly told us that it's important for the students. When we talk about students and teachers, they talked about students. Students, get engaged, be part of the organization, get to know different people from different cultures, and educate your own peers, really mentor them. The students also talked about, we learned about Black history. And the students that were there, students of color, didn't like the fact that oftentimes they're singled out. Oh, this is Black History Month. This is going to be about you. So let's talk more about Black history going from the beginning. I'm getting the hook, so we will go from there. But faith-based and community groups, the kids just really wanted, or the students want the community in the school. If there's an ability to get the community in, because there's a lot, they talked about access, there's just a lot that the community groups can bring into the school.
Good evening. I'm reporting for Group 13. It was a great discussion and a great group, and they agreed on the following responses to the questions. The first one, racism affects young people's educational opportunities based on, one, how schools are funded, and two, institutionalized racism. Question two, the group stated that teachers could address their own latent prejudices through self-reflection and also through anti-oppression training. And secondly, integration of the leadership structure. Our group felt that teachers should reflect the demographic of their students. And lastly, community organizations and faith-based institutions need to get involved, and we need to recruit volunteers from these organizations to foster positive thinking among the youth. Thanks.